Good evening, poultry keepers. I'm going to start us off. I've got a question for you. If you show, have you ever experienced taking one of your birds, a really good show bird, to a show and it's been doing winning, but suddenly it doesn't act like it's the same bird? Well, chances are your bird may be just a little bit run down, stressed from a hectic show schedule. Is there anything you can do? You bet there is. And coming up, we're going to share those tips with you. We want to start with some.
I'm going to get rid of that in a second. There we go.
We got us all here tonight. We're in good shape. Good to go. We've got some management tips and some nutritional advice for you that will help your show birds. And I've got a bit of an analogy I wanted to share with you because this is what I experienced. I had birds for a number of years before I decided I wanted to start showing, and I know many of you feel the same way. But I felt sort of like I was learning how to swim because it was totally new, and I know some of you folks feel that way too. Totally new experience, but using that swimming analogy, I was hoping that it would be like going into the shallow end of the pool first, where maybe the water was about ankle deep, but it didn't really work out that way. It was right into the deep end. So I want to try to help you overcome some of the deep end fears, and I know Jeff does too. So pre-show, what are some of the things that you can do to help your birds? Show birds can be particularly attuned to stress, and anything we can do to eliminate stress on those birds, they're going to not only show better, but they're going to hold their show condition much longer. Now, it can vary from breed to breed as to how long they remain in show condition. My reds would stay in show condition for several weeks. I know in talking to Craig Henson, his birds a week or two, and he says they're pretty much out of show condition then. So one of the first things that I like to do for my birds is I check them over for parasites, both externally and internally, because parasites can take a real toll on your birds. I want to get them used to coops. I try to use a coop that is a little bit larger than the coop you're going to use at the show. I want them to have room to move around, to stretch, to kind of be chickens. I don't want them to feel crowded in those little coops.
All right, you got to stop now. You said check them out. I'm going to check them out for internal and external parasites. Are you literally doing a fecal float on them for the insides?
Yes, okay. I would do a fecal on my show birds, just for my peace of mind, if nothing else. I've never really had tremendous worm problems with my birds, but I will certainly do fecals on those birds.
Okay, and then external, you're just examining, right? You're looking for them.
You want to for lice and mites. You want to check the base of the neck, under the wings, around the vent, base of the tail. Those are the four primary areas you want to check. And if you see anything, give them a squirt of whatever lice and mite spray you use. I used one for many, many years, and it was an off-label product. But back in those days, we didn't have much available for treating lice and mites. Of course, we did have some things that really worked, but you can't get them anymore. Also, be sure you keep your birds in a well-ventilated area. And Jeff has talked about this before, but ammonia can really take a severe toll on your birds. If you go into your barn or your area where you're training your show birds and you smell ammonia, if you're smelling ammonia up here where you're standing, just imagine what it's like down on their level. And it can burn their eyes. It can cause respiratory problems, and birds that are suffering are not going to show well. So make sure your bedding is always clean and dry. And if it gets soiled or gets wet, change out the bedding right away as soon as you possibly can.
And when you talk about the coops, I know I've asked this before and I really remember the answer. You said bigger than like the show coops you would have at the show. But just how long are you putting your birds in there? Are you doing it a couple hours a day? You put them in there for 3 weeks before?
Usually my birds I would put in there for 2 weeks
Okay.
before the show. But then I also would bring them back. And that area also served as my biosecurity area. They would go back into those same coops. They wouldn't go back into the flock.
Okay.
And as you know, I was showing reds, and I was using coops that were about 3 by 3 feet,
Okay.
which is considerably bigger than those
Yes.
show coops they have at the poultry shows.
And tall enough. I feel like that's sometimes something people, when they're building, everybody thinks about the widths and depths and then doesn't get it tall enough for the birds to really.
You want to be careful. You don't want to get it too tall to where they're going to try to fly up to roost and bang into the top of the coop. You want them to know that tops. I even know some folks that would put thin plywood up over on the top, so it was a solid top on the birds to keep discouraging them from wanting to fly up and to try to roost.
But they should be able to stand naturally, right? You
Oh
don't
yes,
want them
yeah. You don't want them
scrunched
all
down.
hunkered down and shrunk down.
Yeah.
But
Because this is also going to help how they're going to stand when they get to the show, right? Like how
yes,
they exist. That's
yes.
what you're. Okay. All right. You can keep going now. Sorry.
I can keep. All right, bless your heart. And with all of that I just ran through, I'm going to let Jeff talk about what you can do nutritionally to boost their vigor and immunity. So, Jeff?
Well, and I'm making the assumption that people are already feeding their birds really good, nutritious feed, right? So from the premise of feeding great feed, really to get those birds ready, I'd like for you to get some additional vitamin E into the birds. That when I say really good feed, you want to make sure that your vitamin E level in your feed is running around 50 IU's per pound. You want to make sure that they have the maximum allowable selenium, which is 0.3 parts per million. And that should be on any legal feed label for poultry feeds. Okay. So if you don't see the vitamin E level does not have to be on there, but the selenium level is required by law. So we're looking for that 0.3. All right. That's as a feed person, that's all we're legally allowed to recommend. If you can find a selenium supplement, without getting carried away and crazy, you may want to find something that you can just kind of take along with you. So vitamin E and selenium work together. One doesn't work well without the other, and but they're two of your primaries for boosting the immune system, right? So this is like, just getting them ready. Their immune system's functioning at 100%. And the reason I say that is stress actually suppresses the immune system and allows them to be more susceptible to picking up illnesses from strange birds, right? You don't want to bring anything home from the show or while you're transporting. So let's try and, let's get a little extra vitamin E. Let's start front loading the vitamin E to them, even above that 50. I'd like for them to get an additional 50, for 3 to 5 days before the show. Okay. So prior to the show, let's get some extra vitamin E. Look, you can go to the grocery store. You can pick up vitamin E oil-filled gel caps. You poke the end of it with a pin or a pocket knife, and you squeeze it out on top of their drinking water. They're going to get it. Okay. Just don't overthink this. It's pretty simple. Along with that, I'd like for them to get some extra B vitamins, which are your stress and your calming vitamins. These are going to kind of help your bird manage stressful events or new surroundings, new people, new birds, all that. So there's a really good product out there. I've been recommending this for over 20 years. It's a Total B liquid. It's actually made for humans. It's a B complex. You can put it in their water. Fairly inexpensive. 1 dropper full is enough for a human being. So for a bird, we're looking at, 2, 3, 4 drops is plenty. But if we can get that into them, on a daily basis, that's going to help them manage stress, right? It's going to help keep them calm. The other thing that I put together was for the show was a homemade electrolyte pack. And Karen was awesome about putting this all on banners so you can come back and get it later. But we're looking at, per gallon of drinking water, 2 ounces of apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon of cooking molasses, a half a teaspoon of salt, and a half a teaspoon of Epsom salt. So some of you are going to scratch your head and say, what's the Epsom salt for? Well, believe it or not, magnesium is the calming mineral. So having an ample amount of magnesium, it doesn't take much, but putting a little bit of extra magnesium in their diet or in their drinking water is going to help keep them calmer, more docile, easier to handle. And it's also going to relieve stress. And so
is that what's in the Epsom salts? Is there magnesium in Epsom
magnesium sulfate is what's in Epsom salt.
Okay.
Don't get carried away with this. So half a teaspoon is plenty, folks. If you put too much in, you're going to cause runny manure and diarrhea. Don't get crazy. When I say a half a teaspoon, I mean a half a teaspoon. That doesn't mean a teaspoon or whatever your best guess of a teaspoon is. It's, measure this out. Because too much of this is going to ruin your day. The bird's going to have the squirts and it's going to be sticking to the feathers and you're going to mess up your feathers for show day. So a little bit does the trick. But those are really the things, the electrolyte I want you to take with you. It's not for prior to the show, but while you're at the show, once you've arrived, you can start offering that. It doesn't have to be 24/7, maybe once a day, give them a little bit of that. The folks who have been trying this say once the birds smell it and taste it, they're cleaning up the water bowl, right? So you're encouraging them to drink more, right? And get this into them. So, a couple of tablespoons up to a quarter of a cup, which I think is 2 tablespoons anyway, is going to do the job. Then you can just fill that back. You don't have to rinse it out. You can fill it back up with good, clean drinking water, let them go on with the day. So that's plenty. Those are the tips I would want you to consider, and I think Rip's going to cover it, but bring your own feed from home, bring your own high quality feed from home. Don't change the feed. Don't let the people at the show feed your bird. You need to be the one taking care of that, right? So how much they're supposed to get, when they're supposed to get it. So your birds are going to be a whole lot more comfortable if you're feeding them and it's their regular feed.
Jeff, quick question. On these vitamins and mineral supplementations, how soon before the show, or I shouldn't say how soon, how far in advance before show should they start supplementing their birds with these?
Yeah, the vitamin E, the selenium, and the B vitamins, I'm looking at 3 to 5 days prior to the show. They're going to kick in quick, right? It's not like you need a week lead time. If you only have 3 days before you start the trip, you do want to start it at home, and during the trip, and, continue it while you're at the show. And even when you get home, right, continue it for an extra 3 to 5 days, between shows. Once you get them home, right, keep them on that regiment the entire time that they're gone, plus 3 days, and you're going to be really happy with the outcome. And so is the bird. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much.
And Rip, I interrupted you earlier when you were trying to ask my questions, but you had some more about strange noises and people and
yes, and we talked a little bit about that under conditioning your birds for show, but your birds are going to be seeing a lot of birds they're not familiar with. Sometimes they may be cooped next to a different breed or on the side or on the back of them. I'd like to try, when I have my birds coop training, I will shuffle the birds around so they don't always have the same birds on each side of them. If I've got different breeds, I'll sometimes bring a different breed in to do that as well. Some people will play music on, just set a radio playing 24/7. I like to use an audio recording that I made at a show one time, because that's the sounds they're going to be hearing when they go to a show. They're going to hear all the roosters crowing and the hens cackling and the turkeys gobbling and the guineas screaming their heads off and all the waterfowl going off. But the more you can get them accustomed to this beforehand, the less stress your birds are going to experience during the show, and the better they're going to show.
Thanks. Sorry for
Okay.
interrupting.
Hey, folks, before we go any further, if you're finding the information in this video helpful and you're liking what we're sharing with you, if you just take a moment and just, most folks would tell you to click on the like button, but this is a poultry show, so just pick the like button. We'd appreciate it. It lets us know that you're finding it helpful, and it helps other folks find this show as well. So we'd appreciate it, and thank you very much for doing that. Let's dive into showtime. What do you do when it's showtime? Or what should you do when it's showtime? If you're traveling, I feel like we ought to have some fanfare music going on.
That's right.
But one thing, and this is not exactly showtime, but this is the appropriate place to put it in. If you're traveling a long distance to a show, and when I first started showing, we had one show in the state of Florida, one open poultry show, and that was in Orlando. And the other open poultry shows, the closest was up in middle Georgia. And those long trips can add stress to your birds. So if you're making these long trips, plan some rest breaks, not only for you, but for your birds. So make sure you take just a little bit to offer them a little bit of feed, a little bit of water, and help to reduce the stress from that end. Now, when you get to the show and you find out your exhibitor number and where all your birds are supposed to go, before you put your bird in the coop, I like to take a permethrin based lice and tick spray and just spray down the bedding just lightly. You don't have to saturate it. For years I use this product here, Adams Flea and Tick Spray. It's off-label use, but it works great. It's something my mentor recommended to me. And I'll be honest with you, back when I was actively judging, I have judged some classes and I could feel the little bugs crawling around on my neck going up, and then I've used it on myself and I'm still alive to tell the tale. But just to be on the safe side, since it is an off-label use, just practice.
Don't sell your eggs afterwards.
Don't sell your, withhold eggs. On feeding and watering, here's another good point. Jeff said, bring your feed and water from home. That's what your birds are used to. I'm going to take that a step further. Bring their feed and water cups from home. Some shows have feed and water cups. Some shows don't. Some shows will have the really nice heavy duty water cups like I use. Some shows will have a little 4-ounce paper cup. And for some males with big combs, it's hard to get their heads down in there to get water out of that. So bring what they're used to. It's just common sense. It's just one more thing that you can do. It's one of those little attention to detail things that you can do that's going to make you stand out from the rest of the crowd with your birds. Now, just before judging, I'd like to give a light feeding and watering, and then I'll remove the cups. And the reason I do that, if you have ever seen a bird in a show, and they have a very distended, very full crop, it looks like they swallowed an orange or something right here, and it throws the front way off of balance. Give them a little bit just so they're not hungry. Maybe a quarter of what you would normally feed, but just enough to take the edge off. I like to have them a little bit on the hungry side, because then they're active and they're moving around. They seem to show their best. When the judging is over, you can go back and give them more feed and give them more water. But that's just a little tip that's worked well for me over the years and has been a good practice for me to follow. You want to keep an eye on your birds and monitor if they're showing signs of stress. Then something's going on there. You need to figure out what it is and what can you do about it. This is especially true if you're showing in a hotter time of the year. Birds can suffer from heat stress really fast, and that recipe that Jeff showed for electrolytes, that will really help save your birds. So take it and use it. Take it and use it. While we're talking about feeding and nutrition and all that, I want to mention the company that makes our show possible. Perfume Company has been very good about supporting our show. They provide the funding for the software that we use for the live streams and our other videos. And honestly, it is a huge help, and I really appreciate that. Perfume makes some of the best supplements for poultry that I have ever encountered. But it's not only poultry. They make supplements for other livestock, and they also make good garden supplements. If you're into organic gardening, you've probably heard the Perfume Company mentioned for many, many years. I knew them from gardening products long before I knew they were into the livestock product business. So Jeff, do you have any advice that our folks can do nutritionally during the show while the birds are actually cooped in at the show?
No, I gave you all my secrets earlier. I mean, the B vitamins, the vitamin E, are going to be key. That electrolyte blend that Karen put up, it's going to keep them active. It's going to keep them alert. It's going to, and they're going to get distracted because of all the other fowl that are there. That hint of molasses is a stimulant for them, and they can smell it. So I want to keep them from getting dehydrated, right? So if I can get if I can get the right amount of fluids into them by using that, that's really what that's all about. And it's not magic foo-foo dust or anything like that. It's just, look, it's really simple, and it doesn't cost you hardly anything to make this, right? And there's nothing harmful in there. If the person taking the birds to the show is feeling stressed, they ought to have a good swig themselves. It'll help out. I swear, it's going to help out. And look, it's too simple for some people, right? Because there isn't any magic foo-foo dust in there, but it doesn't need to be. So just give it a try.
And let me just clarify. You're giving them this instead of water, right? You're not adding this to their water.
No. So you empty the cup out, empty their water cup out, put about a quarter cup, couple tablespoons, quarter cup in there. We don't want to fill the water cup with this, right? Let them clean that up or get close to cleaning it up, and then fill it up with fresh water that you brought from home, and and just keep going. I don't want this in there 24/7. I don't want it in there, just once a day, when they seem to be stressed the most. When you're changing out the water, change out the water, dump out the water, put this in, let them have some, half hour, 45 minutes later, come back, put regular water back in there.
So not on every rest stop you stop on the way up to Middle Georgia.
No.
You don't want this to be the only thing you offer.
Yeah.
Okay.
When Rip was talking about, giving the birds a break, I'm thinking, now, do they have a way to put a leash on a chicken to walk it around the doggy area? Not that you want to walk it there, but is there a way to walk your chicken when you stop at the rest area? So
I have seen chicken harnesses.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want
come to see me. I'll take you to the store where you can buy harnesses in many different sizes for chickens.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get me one of those.
All right, we got some
Jeff, you're very easily entertained.
We got some pre-show comments that we can discuss. So Jennifer wants to remind us to keep the cages small when you're transporting them to the show.
Yes, absolutely. I like them small enough to where they can't turn around, because when they start turning around, it's when they start messing up feathers.
All right. And then also saying to use oxine before caging and give ivermectin before leaving to the show. So both similar to your.
Mm-hmm. I have never used oxine, so
Yeah.
I can't add anything to that, but probably very sound advice.
All right. And then one question. So
Yes.
Mike says he likes the idea of spraying the bedding, but some of the birds get moved around after they're penned. They move them to better place birds. Do you recommend you spray bedding if they move them? So you're running around after paying attention to your birds.
It's hard to do that because you don't know where they're going to put the bird. Honestly, I've never had a problem because I do spray before the show starts, but I will also, and I'll get to that in a minute in a little bit more detail, but I also spray my birds before I take them home. So I'm just trying to cover as many of my bases as I possibly can.
So preventative, and then afterwards a treatment
Correct.
if needed. Okay.
Correct.
All right. I'll let you go on now and hopefully won't interrupt you.
Okay, no problem. After the show's over, what do I do? What I just said before, when I take the birds out of the coop to put them in the transport box, I will give them a spray of insect spray. Again, the base of the neck, shot under each wing, the base of the tail, and just above the vent. I have never brought any bugs home from a show doing that.
We need a graphic for that, Rip. You need to make a graphic for where to spray your chicken perfume.
Well, actually, I already have one made for something else, but we'll share that next time.
I should have said that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, you see there, you're sleeping the switch. It's your fault. You're the producer.
Yeah.
Again, when I'm taking them home, I'll stop for a rest break, let the birds eat a little bit, drink a little bit. I know some folks will take a dog exercise pen, X pen, and set it up for their birds to stretch their legs. I just have these horrible visions of my birds escaping and flying all over the truck rest stop area if I do that. So I haven't done that.
Well, they make those pyramid pens, the
pens?
Drop pens that fold up pretty nicely.
That would work.
That would make me feel secure if you could do that somewhere. With supervision, not just leave them there overnight.
No, I wouldn't. Never.
Yeah.
I can foresee too many things going awry.
Yeah.
All right, we fed and watered them on the way home. Again, you want to be sure that you put your birds in a separate biosecure area. Again, I use the same area for biosecurity that I do for coop training birds because it's the same birds coming back to the same spot. I want to be sure and monitor for parasites and treat those if needed. And because I'm going to probably be taking these same birds to another show, again, I want to keep policing that bedding and removing any wet bedding or soil bedding. You don't want to start coccidiosis in those birds and soil bedding. If you get that out as soon as you possibly can, your chances of having to wash them again immediately are greatly reduced, so you can keep them clean. And again, on the coops, you want to provide more than adequate space for those birds. They need to be able to move around and get a little exercise. It just keeps them healthy, wealthy, and on their toes. So, and again, continue your feeds to support the birds nutritionally, to support their immune system, and to help keep them calm with the vitamins and mineral supplements that Jeff has suggested.
Now, Rip, you were talking about bedding. So between shows, so you don't have to wash them again.
Mm-hmm.
nobody, I mean, is there a negative to keeping them on wire? You know, like in a wire cage versus a bedded cage? Just even if you did it for that short period between shows.
You could do that. I know that Craig Hansen keeps his coachings on wire. I, I was always taught, don't put feather-legged breeds on wire floor cages. Obviously, Craig does it, and it works very, very well for him. But really, there's no downside to it, actually, as far as I can see.
Well,
So
it's the
what
same
size
thing. If your
wire?
birds have never been on wire,
I've for bantams, I think for all birds, I'd probably use 1/2 by 1 inch welded wire.
Okay.
That give you ample room for the droppings to go through, but still support the feet.
So 1/2 by 1. All right. I'm just curious what size wire you'd use.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, my school of thinking is birds should be on the ground, right? Whether it's in bedding or whatever, but that's not the show world, and I get it. So, you know, between shows, if you don't want to bathe them again, you probably just keep them on wire. If it's not going to be a long time, you know, I mean, if you're talking months, then put them back on the ground. And
I see Craig is using vinyl coated wire,
yeah, 1 by 1.
1 by 1.
Yeah, that's good wire.
Down here in Florida, we call that crab trap wire because that's what they're using to make crab traps with catching blue crabs. Just in case you're in Florida and you want to go buy that wire, ask for crab trap wire.
I have such trouble buying wire. I'll take any hints as to what to search online. So I like that. Yeah.
But yeah.
So, you know, post show from the nutritional standpoint, you know, or from where I come from, it's going to be the same as the post. And I talked about that a few minutes ago, but it's like, you know, continue with that B vitamins, continue with the extra vitamin E, you know, for that 3 to 5 days after the show. But, and you touched on a little bit, Rip, but if it was me post show, I'm going to be, I want to really inspect the birds closely. Like I want to see, is there a difference in the eye as far as eye clarity? Are they dull? Are they lethargic? Anything that didn't look the same as when I brought them, you know, you want to identify that. So eyes, plumage, you know, look for any warning signs of stress, health, and potential illness. It just goes along with what you were saying, you know, earlier. You just want to look really hard at those birds, you know, and keep them segregated when you get them home, because who knows what you're carrying back, you know. And don't forget to change your clothes, because a lot of that stuff you're going to carry back on dander or, you know, moisture or whatever. So, you know, first thing you do once you put those birds in a quarantine pen, change your clothes. Don't go see the rest of the flock. Okay. More poultry diseases are carried on humans than they are by bird transmission. So we just need to be safe.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Karen,
Right.
do we have any more questions or comments? Or
We've got, I think this is Mike again, saying that at the county fair he places a rabbit feet protector. So they make mats to help rabbits have a resting spot on the wire to give the birds a place to get off.
you kind of got to be careful at some of the fairs because they'll use wire that's actually too big. I've seen some fairs they'll use 1 by 2 inch wire, and a bird can get his foot caught and damaged in wire that's that size. So yeah, good advice.
And that's just something to have with you, right? Because it's not like you're going to run out and buy
Right.
20 of those at the last. PetSmart's not that good. All right. So Laura says that she's going to her state fair, South Dakota, in a week. I think that's South Dakota. So they're enjoying additional tips as to what else they can do. And then Craig is giving us a link, but I'm going to have to follow that link elsewhere to see what it's to. So.
I've heard of that company.
Oh, it's the wire.
Yes.
The Kluber. I can put it up, but it's where to buy wire. So I
Ask and ye shall receive, Karen.
That's right. I'm excited. Oh, don't look now. I should stop looking. So, um, that,
Folks, if you've got any additional comments or suggestions, we would certainly like to hear them. The one thing that I really enjoy about this group is it is very willing to share with each other about what works well for you. And
literally, Craig, it's sitting over there on my laptop, just waiting for this to be over so I can dive into that.
well, he admits he's an enabler.
I have $3,000 worth of 1 by 1, 1.25 by 1.25 chain link wire that I've been waiting months for to come in.
No,
But I'm excited to build all my new fences with small chain link.
Yes, I had some
sturdy chain link wire.
Small pins. They were 3 by 3 by 8 that were made out of that wire, and the metal chain link framing. Do not drop one on your toe.
No.
No. You'll limp for a month. They are heavy.
All right. Well,
that is all I have for the good of the cause this evening. It went fairly fast tonight, but I think we covered a lot of important ground. I know that questions I get a lot are on this subject. If I take my birds to the show, what should I do? What should I be prepared to do? So I hope these answered some of your questions. If not, and you think of something later, shoot us a message over on our Facebook group, and I'll do my very, very best to make sure you get an answer that you can use and put to good use.
Hey, I got a question that Carol couldn't post for some reason. It didn't come through.
Yes.
And she wanted to know, what do you do about birds that you buy at the show? What do you do anything different with them? What's the advice on buying birds at a poultry show?
Look them over very, very, very carefully. Usually folks that are selling birds are not a problem because the birds are healthy. But occasionally you'll get some folks that are chicken dealers, and they'll come flying in there with birds that are not healthy. They're sick. You want to check them over closely. You want to make sure that you have treated them for external parasites, especially. And if you have a place where you can hold them completely separate from all your other birds, do that. You don't want to hold them in the same area where your valuable showbirds are. But that don't be penny wise and pound foolish, and do the extra little things to protect your flock.
So Craig is saying that he much prefers to buy ones that had been exhibited during the show versus just the ones in the back of the van.
Now, not everybody's willing to sell their birds. That's the other side of that coin. So if you approach somebody about buying a bird that's in the show and they don't want to sell it, they have a reason for that, and they may have plans for it either as for other shows or in the breeding pens.
Craig wants to get your goat by talking about pink spray again.
I hate it. I do not love it. Pink spray is a human hair care product that folks will use on their birds to shine them up. Now, it'll put a shine on a bird, no doubt about it. But it's worse than Brill cream. It doesn't even take a little dab to do the job. Just spritz. If you're going to use that spray or any of the other sheen enhancing sprays, spray it on the cloth and then wipe it on the bird. Don't sit there and hose the bird down with it, because a lot of shows are on concrete that are slick concrete. And I have bad knees anyway. I have literally almost fallen at a show, hitting a slick spot there where somebody was hosing down a bird with the pink spray stuff. I don't like it. in case there was any question how I felt about it, I don't like it. But you can also use too much of it, and that will actually attract dust and cause it to stick to your bird. So it kind of defeats the purpose.
All right, I'm gonna do some interpretation of Georgetta's question here.
Mm-hmm.
So she wants to talk to the judge after the show, but she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel comfortable just barging up and interrupting him while he's having conversations with other people. So how do you recommend that she get his attention and get some help from the judge?
I would just hang out there like I was casually listening to what the judge was telling the other exhibitor, and then when he was through, I'd say, I've got a question for you. Or when you have a moment, could you explain? Or when you have a moment, could you show me?
So lurk nearby
yes.
and look intently at them. I know how to do that. That's my go-to.
Georgetta, don't stand around like a buzzard waiting on something to die.
Right.
But
There's an art to lurking.
Yeah.
There is an art to lurking. Show interested, but not clingy. So
yes. And you'll find, Georgetta, that most judges are more than willing to help you unless they've had a terribly bad day or not feeling well for some reason, or they have a flight to catch. But that's what I love about poultry shows, is that people by and large are very willing to share information and what they know with newcomers.
All right. Craig is encouraging us in a backhanded manner to just walk right up to somebody and say, hey, I want to buy your bird, and see what kind of price they put on that bird after you do that.
Yeah, you make it a little bit of shock to your system when they put a price on it. Good birds are like good feed. They ain't cheap.
My not that my Rhode Island Reds are anything to write home about, but I mean, after the show where I bought the eggs, after the show, he put a sign up on his birds that said he had hatching eggs from that male in the car, and I jumped on that. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of it is hanging around after the judging, right? That's when all this stuff goes down.
And some folks will actually write on their coop tag, "This bird for sale, see owner."
Okay.
And somebody's going to say, how do you know who the owner is? Because most shows have a number on the coop card and not a name. But you can go up and check with show management. Most of them have an exhibitor's list. And the exhibitor's number is on that list. You'll have a number and then the person's name.
Some people, I've seen that written, but I just assumed it was written after the judging. Some people put that on there before the judging?
The number, the exhibitor's number?
Well, no, they put on that they're for sale. That seems a weird thing to do before.
I've seen it done both ways.
Okay.
Now, honestly, as a judge, it makes me wonder.
Yeah. Do you even like your birds? Yeah.
Wonder why they want to get what's going on here.
That's sort of. I'm like, I feel like that would affect the judging. Like,
the only time I look at an exhibitor's card is when I want to make a note on it. I just completely ignore it.
And because this question comes up every time, how do you decipher what in the world the judge wrote on your card?
We are all unique. We all have a system. We all pretty much create our own system. I use one of pluses and minuses and check marks. Doesn't mean anything to anybody except it helps me keep track of what I thought about that particular bird.
So talking to the other exhibitors will probably, if they've exhibited under that judge before, they can probably help you figure out what it probably means.
Well, and again, there's nothing wrong with asking the judge, here's these marks you made. Could you help me understand what they mean?
Well, and I bet you if you're standing around in the semicircle lurking with the other 20 people who are also wanting the same thing, they might all have that same question. So you might
Could very well be.
Might be able to do everybody a favor by just asking. So, all right.
Rip, I mean,
yep.
and I want Craig to weigh in on this as well. But so, if you go to a show, and for the people who are listening and thinking about, since the subject of buying a bird comes up, I mean, you said they're not cheap, but what have you seen in your experience? What are you looking at to buy a show bird?
Minimum of $100.
Okay.
Minimum.
I'm sure it depends on breed, but
and a really quality bird can go up from there. I've seen them go for excess of $1,000.
Is that breed dependent at that point? Is that like some of the rare breeds?
No.
Is Karen going to be able to take her cockerels and sell them for $500 a piece?
If I wanted a really top-notch Rhode Island red, okay, I would do my homework before the show to find out how exhibitor Joe Blow's birds have been placing. If they have been placing consistently high, and if he's been winning class champion, reserve class champion, or higher, I know it's going to cost me more to buy that bird, just because his birds are in demand and he's winning very well with them.
So Craig looks like he bid $900 per bird on a trio. So whatever 900 times 3 is, which I should know at the top of my head, but don't.
That'd be $1,800.
Yeah. Well,
no,
so
a trio is 3, so that'd be $2,700.
Yeah.
Well, I was giving them a bargain.
You made me feel better about not knowing the fact that you all got different numbers there. But
those must have been pretty special birds at $900 a piece for a trio. So.
It's honestly, whatever you're willing to pay for a bird and they're willing to sell it for is what's going to determine the price.
Right. We don't realize that, but for some of the people listening, it's like I just didn't want to set the expectation too low, thinking they're going to go in and buy, a grand champion or best in breed for $100, because that's probably not going to happen.
No.
And so it can be, your entry level at $100 is what you're saying. It's going to be at least $100 more than likely.
Well, think of that. You're at the show, and now you subtracted shipping. So that shipping that adult bird was going to be $150 if you weren't at the show. So I mean, you're basically, if you just do that, you're walking away with a bird for the price it would have cost to send him to you in the mail. So you got to add some.
It's a show, and show birds are probably not the best place to look for a bargain for birds. I'll be honest with you. When I was first starting out, you could get a reasonable quality bird for $5 or $10. You get a really good one for $50, but that is not the case anymore.
Yeah. How old were you then, Rip? I mean, come on.
A little younger.
That's still what people want to pay for birds.
I know.
Oh yeah.
They don't have any reality, but I think it's good to set the expectation for people. I mean, what they need to have cash in their pocket when they go to the show.
It's Craig just made a comment. Show birds may not be good breeders, and in many cases that is absolutely the truth. Particularly in reds, I would not anticipate that a show-winning red would be a good breeder, because there's so many things that you have to take into account in breeding that particular breed. Do they have excess black? Where is it? How intense is it? And good breeders are not good show birds many, many times, and vice versa. All
right, so Georgetta wants to know if you're at the auction, not the sale barn, but if you're at the auction at the Ohio Nationals, can you assume that those are from fairly good birds, or?
Yes. Okay. If you look at who's providing or who brought those birds to be auctioned, and you look at their show winnings and how they place birds and their background in poultry, those birds are going to be above average by and large. Some of them are going to be really good birds. Some of them.
It brings up an excellent point. Where does one look up this show record, Rip?
Probably the easiest thing is a publication called Poultry Press.
Okay.
It's a monthly newspaper that comes out that has all the show listings for upcoming shows. They will also
He's
they will also have placements at shows, and those who have done any winning will usually take out a an ad in Poultry Press to advertise that fact. So that's one
but
of the
they're listed, right? The winners.
Yes.
I mean, because otherwise, looking, I mean, most individual clubs will publish results on Facebook or whatever, but that's a whole lot of
and they've
pecking
changed.
to get
Yeah,
to.
well, it's not as much as it used to be, because when I was coming up, we used to do for each breed, each variety, first through fifth place, we would list them all for cocks, hen, cockerels, and pullets. So that's 20 birds. And you could have volumes of information to sort through.
Yeah.
But it was helpful. It was valuable information. But now you're doing good to get best of breed and reserve of breed, or best in reserve of variety. But it's still information that you can put to good use. But if I were to know those, that's what I would do. I would get a subscription to Poultry Press. It's not that expensive.
And at the auction, it'll say who donated them, right?
Yes.
Like,
Oh, absolutely.
so. And if it's at an auction, you're probably benefiting somebody, right? The club or the show committee, or usually they're raising money for something, right?
And Craig brought up a good point, and thank you, Craig. He said, look on the APA and ABA for exhibitor points online. And I frequently fail to mention that because I'm not, the points don't mean that much to me, and I've never been truly interested in them. So, Craig, I apologize. That was just a serious oversight on my part, and thank you for bringing that to.
Can you, I know you don't know the answer, but Craig, can you tell when they won those? Like, will they list like points in 2020 and 2021, or will it be for their entire lives? Like, this person's been showing for 42 years and they haven't won anything in the last 20, but they have a lot of points.
They are listed by years. Also, the AP and ABA yearbook will have those point listings as well.
Excellent. All right. I think you can wrap us up again.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up in a small package here. Folks, thank you for being with us this evening, and we certainly appreciate your being with us tonight. And on behalf of everybody, we hope you have a good time. We hope you enjoy your birds, and we hope to see you at a show somewhere soon. Bye-bye. Goodbye, everybody.